In today's video, we're going to talk about the pros and the cons of living in Hixson, Tennessee. We'll start with 5 pros, 5 of the reasons that Hixson is a great choice for people relocating to the Chattanooga area. And then we'll get into 5 cons, or 5 of the biggest pitfalls and regrets that people have when relocating to Hixson, Tennessee. So if you want to hear those, make sure to stick around to the end of the video because that's where we'll be going over the cons. Just a little overview of Hixson. For decades, Hixson has really been this community that embodied suburban ideals. You had spacious homes on larger lots, easy access to all of your daily necessities, and strong ties to the beauty of the Tennessee Valley. But as Chattanooga has grown in popularity, Hixson is now facing a really strong tension. A lot of the longtime residents and people that have grown up there really cherish that suburban feel that the community has in its DNA. But now you're getting all this pressure from more traffic, new development, and shifting demographics that are challenging the identity of Hixson itself. So without further ado, let's jump into the 5 pros and 5 cons of living in Hixson, Tennessee. The first pro to living in Hixson is that for commuters, for people commuting to downtown Chattanooga, you have a massive edge. Because Hixson is located northeast of downtown Chattanooga, you actually completely bypass going through the I-24 Ridgecut, which is one of the worst bottlenecks in the Chattanooga area, period. During rush hour, there is almost always traffic at this Ridgecut, and it can be quite extensive. It can really start to add up if you're making that commute every single day. If you're living in Hixson, though, you can access downtown via Highway 153 and then get off on Amnicola and cut straight over to downtown. You can also take Hixson Pike, or you can take 27 over to Chattanooga as well. So this gives you 3 access points to get to downtown Chattanooga. The second pro to living in Hixson is that you have great access to the outdoors. So there is Chester Frost Park, which is right on the Chickamauga Lake. You've got 280 acres of park there, and there are all kinds of wonderful public amenities, everything from tennis courts to a beach area where you can swim, to a public boat ramp, to RV and camping sites, and tons of places to picnic and hang out with the family. A little bit more centrally located in Hixson is Greenway Farm, which is a 180-acre park with picnic tables, pavilion access. There's even a small convention center there, an old farmhouse, and a dog park. In addition, there is 6 miles of trails that are very walkable. Some of them are dirt. You've got some crushed gravel, and then you have asphalt as well in the park. This runs right along the North Chickamauga Creek, and there are plenty of places to put your kayak or canoe in and enjoy the North Chickamauga Creek. One of the things I've heard people say that live in Hixson is that if you live in Hixson, you almost have to have a boat. With the Chickamauga Lake and Harrison Bay being so close, it really is super convenient to get out on the water, and that is one of the best things to do in the Chattanooga area during the summer. The third pro is that you really do have an emerging food scene in the Hixson area. Just the other day when I was up there, I stopped at Drip Kitchen Coffee. This was my first time there, and I was thoroughly impressed. It is a local coffee shop in the Hixson area. They had great coffee and great food options at really competitive and affordable prices. There's also Nick's Deli, which supposedly has some of the best sandwiches in town. There's Mike's Tavern, there's Sidetrack and Lakeshore Grill, there's Taco Town, and in addition, you've got all of your major chain restaurants like Chili's, Longhorn, Outback, Panera, Olive Garden, Starbucks. There really is a bit of everything in the Hixson area. So to me, this is a big pro, having easy access to both local and chain restaurants, because if you're in the mood for a chain restaurant, it's going to be right there. You're going to know exactly what you're going to get, but there's still an opportunity to go out and explore and find those local hidden gems that are going to become your new favorite restaurant. Pro 4 is that you have a lot of convenience in the Hixson area. So some of the other suburbs in the greater Chattanooga area, like Ottawa, which is probably the biggest suburb that frequently gets compared to Hixson, it doesn't have all the stuff in that suburb that Hixson does. So Hixson has the Northgate Mall. You've got stores like Belk, TJ Maxx, Old Navy. There's a Target right there, Publix, Food City. Pretty much all of the essentials, everything you're going to need on a weekly basis is right there in Hixson, and you don't have to leave Hixson to go and find that stuff. In addition, where a lot of your other major retailers are, elsewhere in Chattanooga, in the East Brainerd and Gun Barrel area specifically, there is a lot of traffic, a lot of congestion, and sometimes it can just be a headache to navigate all of that. I find that the stores tend to be just a little bit nicer in Hixson overall. There's fewer people, and it's just a slightly more relaxed shopping experience. Not to mention that if you live in Hixson, all of the daily conveniences, all of the things that you're going to need on a weekly basis are going to be within 5 minutes of you. So I think for families, especially people with younger children, this takes a little bit of the mental load, the mental strain that comes with living in some of the other suburbs off. If you live in Ottawa, for example, and you need to go to a clothing store, sporting goods store, you're most likely going to have to drive over to Gun Barrel or East Brainerd. If you've got a bunch of little kids, that could be a hassle to go down there. So I think for families and people that are seeking that close accessibility, Hixson has a major advantage. The fifth pro to living in Hixson is that it is a community with a real sense of character and community to it. Now, Hixson is technically part of Chattanooga now, but a lot of the residents that live there think of Hixson as its own city. The area was settled and founded by the Hixson family all the way back in 1821, and there are deep historic roots in the Hixson area. It's a strong community. There are lots of churches, parks, things to do, community events, and it really is a place with a strong independent culture. Now, for people relocating, it can be hard to break into that local culture, but there are plenty of opportunities to do that, especially if you push yourself to get involved by joining things like the YMCA, joining a church or a club or some sort of organization. You're going to quickly find community and build a sense of community in Hixson. Hey, really quick, I am a licensed real estate agent in both Tennessee and Georgia. So if you're thinking about moving to the area, I would love it if you booked a meeting with me. You can do it through the link in the description. The meetings are short, informative. I do my best to understand your goals with your relocation to the area and help you come up with a strategy and a plan that fits you and your needs. If that sounds like it could be helpful, go ahead and book that meeting. Look forward to speaking with you in person. Let's get back to the video. That is it for the pros of living in Hixson. Now let's talk about the cons or the downsides to living in the Hixson, Tennessee area. So I think the first one is all of the internal traffic and congestion that you experience in Hixson itself. Now, when it comes to commuting from Hixson to other suburbs, there tends to not be so much traffic, but when you're in Hixson itself, especially right around the Northgate Mall on 153, there is a lot of traffic and this can be a headache. What's interesting too is that there tends to be congestion here at odd hours. It's not necessarily just around rush hour. It seems like at weird times like 11 a.m. or 2 p.m., you're still getting quite a bit of congestion around 153. When I was up there doing a little bit of filming, I kept looking at my GPS and I was like, wow, it's really not that long of a drive from the Northgate Mall to Target, but it took forever. It felt like it was forever. I hit every single light. There were tons of people out on the road, and it was at kind of like an odd time of day, I think 10:45 a.m., and there was quite a bit of traffic. And so this is something that I've heard a lot of locals talk about in Hixson. There tends to be quite a bit of congestion and traffic issues in the Hixson, Tennessee area. So these are some of the common concerns from residents when it comes to traffic and congestion. First of all, they're worried that infrastructure hasn't kept pace with development. There are all of these national builders that are starting to put in large tract home neighborhoods in the Hixson area. This is pretty hard to avoid. It's kind of necessary in some ways because you need housing that is affordable for people that are wanting to purchase a home. But it does create a lot of traffic when you're putting in 1,000 homes in the Hixson area. And so people are really worried that we're putting in all these homes, but the infrastructure is not going to keep up with the number of residents moving to the area. A really common frustration that I'm beginning to hear people say is that Hixson feels like it's got the big city traffic problems and congestion without the big city perks. Now, I would push back on that a little bit. I don't think that Hixson really has big city traffic. Go drive around in Atlanta if you want to have big city traffic. But it definitely is becoming an increasingly noticeable problem. The second con to living in Hixson is that there is really kind of a lack of entertainment, especially after 9 p.m. This is the case with a lot of the Chattanooga area in general, but the town tends to shut down pretty early. There's not a lot of nightlife. There's not a lot to do past 8 or 9 p.m. And so many of the younger residents or people looking for more nightlife and things that are open late, they'll head downtown to Fraser Avenue or Martin Luther King Boulevard, or over on Main Street and near the Chattanooga Choo Choo if they want to be out a little bit later. Also, I do think that the Northgate Mall in Hixson is making a bit of a comeback. I think that there are some retailers, especially around the mall, that are really working to kind of revitalize the place, but it really does feel a bit dead in the mall when you go in there. There's not too many people in the mall, and it does shut down pretty early. It's definitely not what it used to be. I think the big thing here is that there's a lack of third places. That is, things like breweries or pubs or public squares or cafes, basically places that you can go outside of your home where you can hang out with friends, experience some community. There's really kind of a lack of that in the Hixson area in general. The third con is the growing pains or development and sprawl that's happening in the Hixson area. We kind of talked about this when we talked about internal traffic and congestion. There are all these tract home builders that are coming into the Hixson area, and they're building these cookie cutter subdivisions that really the homes are so close together you could almost reach out and touch your neighbor's house out your window. For locals and people considering moving to the Hixson area, this could be a concern because where there used to be open green space and fields, there's now these cookie cutter subdivisions. Especially people that have been in the area for a long time, this doesn't feel great. And again, this ties back to con 1, which is that there's internal congestion. There's a lot of development going in. It takes a lot longer to plan for the infrastructure and road upgrades. And so sometimes those infrastructure and road upgrades lag behind the development and the speed of building all of these subdivisions in the area. So I think the big concern for locals and people living in Hixson itself is that all this development, all these new housing developments and subdivisions, they kind of erode at what attracted people to move to Hixson in the first place. The fourth con is that outside of formal gathering places like churches, community events, things like that, it's kind of hard to have a sense of community in Hixson. A lot of neighborhoods are not really geared around community and communal spaces. There's not sidewalks in a lot of these newer developments. And so residents, especially new residents, are saying it's hard to meet new people and make new friends in the Hixson area. It seems that privacy is valued over casual socialization. I saw a number of people mention this and post about this online, and I would push back on this a bit. I think that Hixson does have some great community spaces like Chester Frost Park and Greenway Farms. You just have to be intentional to get out and make plans with people. I think that really is something that's become important as we enter this digital age, especially in a city where so many people are relocating to and they're from all over. Sometimes after a long day at work, it's easier to just hop on your phone and scroll for a bit instead of going out and making friends and meeting people at the park. But I think that's super important. And I would put this back on the residents. I would say that it's really up to you to go out and to build your community, because if you're brand new to the area, you're going to have to work at it to fit in and make new connections and make new friends. The fifth con, and this might actually be a pro to some of you, is that in Hixson, it's a very homogenous social and political landscape. And so you've got a lot of people that think the same politically. There's not as much diversity as there is in some other areas in Chattanooga. And so if you lean more conservative, you're probably going to fit in really well in Hixson. If you're more progressive, you might have a hard time fitting in the Hixson area. And areas like North Shore might be a better or more comfortable fit for you. And so this could really be a bit of a pro and a bit of a con, just depending on your values and your beliefs. But I'll leave that up to you. So anyways, that is going to be it for this video on the pros and cons of living in Hixson, Tennessee. If you found this helpful, then YouTube thinks you might like some of these videos here. I do all kinds of videos on what it's like to live in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and in North Georgia. So if you're thinking about making the move, go ahead and check those out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.